You've got all your ideas mapped out. You've got your equipment. You think you know where you're going to be hosting your podcast. How do you actually record it? You're listening to the How To Podcast series of podcasts, a mini series under the umbrella of the Women Who Podcast show. I'm your host, Alison Fraser. I'm the host of the Women Who Podcast show, which you're listening to right now, as well as Scottish at Heart. And I'm also the founder of the Women Who Podcast membership, where women who struggle with the tech, time, and confidence can grow into kick-ass podcasters. In this episode, we're going to delve into recording an episode, which is the next step in getting on the air. Don't worry about taking notes. If you're driving or out for a run, I'll have links to everything that I mention in the show notes. So you need three things for a podcast. The first is the idea. The second is somewhere to make it. And the third is somewhere to host it. Recording your first podcast episode can be quite daunting for any new podcaster, regardless of how much experience you have of being a guest, maybe on someone else's show, or even how much you like to talk to your friends. When you're a guest, you can just show up and be the star. You don't have to think about how to make the technical bits happen and produce the final product. When you're the host, you know that the buck stops with you in terms of getting audio of a good enough quality to use in a podcast, and then turning it into an episode if you're doing all the behind the scenes work yourself. It's actually a lot easier than a lot of people think to record a podcast episode. The hardest aspect for most people is to have the courage to start, to ask guests to come on, and then release the episode. That all comes down to confidence and feeling worthy of doing it, which I have to say, you totally are. Just do it. Don't care what anyone else says. So let's just say that you've got your first guest ready. They've said yes, you know what you want to talk about with them, but that's as far as you've got. How on earth are you going to get the interview that you're going to do into something that you can put onto a podcast? Well, thanks to the pandemic, most people are now versed in using remote meeting platforms such as Zoom. I've been using Zoom myself for online meetings since 2014. So when we could no longer meet in person, or when I started my own podcasts, it was not too alien to me. I still use Zoom now, but there are other platforms that you can use. What I like about Zoom is that my guest has typically used it before. That familiarity means that when I send them a link to join, they know what to expect. I record audio and video, as I like to see my guest's face, but I only use the audio in my podcast. My Zoom settings are set up so that I record both my track and the guest's track, plus a combined one. And this means that if I need to mute either one of us, it makes it easier in the editing. I've got a blog post all about Zoom settings, so I'll stick that link in the show notes so you can read more. When I record, I choose to record to the cloud, which means I can access my recording from wherever I'm logged into Zoom. And this is helpful if you find yourself recording on your phone or from a different computer. I've had to use my phone before when I was having computer problems. And to be honest, I was pretty impressed with the sound quality that I got from that. It's just my iPhone using my earbuds, and according to the cloud, it was perfect. Zoom gives you 40 minutes free, but if you want to meet for longer, then you will have to upgrade to a paid account. As someone who uses Zoom several times a week, this was a good investment for me. But if you're not going to be using it that often, then you might want to look at something else. You can get around the 40-minute limit by ending a call and then starting another one, but there is a 10-minute stand down in between, so it's not that convenient. There's a platform called StreamYard, which is most commonly used for live streaming to multiple Facebook destinations, for example, in groups and pages at the same time. But it can also be used to record an interview. They have a free account, which allows you to record up to 20 hours of content a month. Once you've ended your recording, you can download it to your computer, share or embed it, or leave it in your dashboard to come back to. StreamYard is mostly used for video, but when you go to download it, you can choose to download just the audio track. I've used StreamYard for streaming live guests into a Facebook group, so if you wanted to give your podcast a live aspect, you could do this as well as release a podcast episode. There's also Riverside, which a lot of podcasters are using right now, though I haven't tried that out yet, so can't really comment on it. With Riverside, you can record your track and your guest's track locally, which means that the recording takes place on the computer instead of over the internet. The advantage of this is that recordings are in studio quality, and after downloading the recording, you won't hear any disruptions caused by bad internet connections. For each guest, you get a separate locally recorded track. The free plan gives you access to unlimited hours of high quality audio and video recording, editing features, plus separate tracks for up to 2 hours of recording. And after 2 hours, you'll get a single track for the entire recording. If you want to get the separate tracks beyond 2 hours or to remove the watermark from your recordings, then you'd have to upgrade to a paid plan. But it sounds like the free plan gives you quite a lot, so give that a go. As noted, I've yet to try Riverside out, and that's mostly because Zoom is working well for me right now. Maybe I should give Riverside a go just to see what it's like. Something similar to Riverside is Squadcast. This was recently acquired by the software company I use for editing Descript. Again, I've not used it because I like using Zoom. So these 4 options, Zoom, StreamYard, Riverside, and Squadcast, are all for recording a podcast with a guest. You can use the same for doing solo episodes, but you have a few more options as a solo podcaster. I use Descript for my editing, and when I record solo episodes, just like this, I record directly into Descript. This saves me the step of recording in another platform, downloading that file to my computer, then uploading that file into Descript for editing. You can hear more about Descript in an episode about editing, but in short, it's a visual form of editing where you upload your files, transcribe them, and with the transcript, you edit by removing any words or sentences that you don't want in your finished file. You can also record your solo episodes on the Voice Memo app on your phone or directly into Audacity, which is another editing platform and one that I use to splice all my files together. So that's how you record a podcast in terms of which platform you can use to talk with your guest or do a solo episode. But before recording, I would encourage you to test out the platforms first, especially if you're going to be using something that you've never tried before. You do not want to be using it for the very first time with a guest and have it fail or have something crash on you and you don't know how to get around it. So ask a friend if they can meet with you online, record something together, and then see how easy it is to download the file and upload to your editing software. It's always good to practice these things when you're not under the pressure that you're putting yourself under with a guest and you're already nervous. So practice first. Got any questions? Please get in touch by email, alisonfraser.co, or send in a voice message. If you've liked what you've heard so far and you want to learn more from me, then the Women Who Podcast membership is open. It's a low-cost membership aimed at making podcasting easy for all members. The link to join is in the show notes. And the podcast membership is for anyone who wants to podcast, but who struggles with the tech, the time, and the confidence to put your podcast out there. Thank you so much for listening.